On my birthday, my brother told me to make a wish, walked me to the stern of the rented yacht, and paced me into the dark water. The music swallowed my scream. I surfaced to see him silhouetted against the deck lights, one hand raised in a slow, helpless shrug, like a man watching an accident he couldn't prevent. "Hold on to the rail, Lida," he'd said a few moments earlier, my scarf fluttering in the wind. "You've never been confident." He poured me Prosecco, topped up my glass, and started talking about simplifying things now that I was alone, the house, the savings, all this money. "Let me do it," he murmured, his eyes on the shore. "You'll thank me later." The boat froze. His smile tightened. "Careful," he warned, coming closer. His hand was on my elbow. Everything slowed before my eyes, and when my feet left the deck, I was in the water. The sea hit me like cold glass. I sank, tasting aluminum and citrus on my tongue. As I stood up, he leaned over the railing, pale, his voice high. "Lida, my God, stay there." The engine roared. For a moment, I thought he would come back, but instead the bow of the boat swung, leaving a white wake that carried him toward the lights of the harbor. I heard him call again, "Help! Someone!" But it was a cry for those listening on shore, not for me. I rocked on the waves, counting my breaths, thinking about the keys I had given him last month, about the questions he had asked about my bank, the exact figure of 430,000. How could my own brother do this to me? Night was falling, and with it a calm I had not expected. I had left too many clues he had not noticed. He did not know about the sealed envelope in my lawyer's office, marked "open unless I call by midnight." He did not know that I had given the harbor clerk our itinerary and told my neighbor to expect my photograph on the dock at 10. He did not know what I had written down the day he borrowed my passport, or that I had already put the things that mattered away from him. There was a red glimmer of light to the south, the hum of an engine cutting through the swell, a lifeboat, its crew shouting, arms reaching out. I let their voices draw me in. "Here I am," I said, and my voice was steady enough to surprise me. By morning, there would be questions he could not answer, notes he could not explain. But to understand why the cuffs were on his wrists and why I'm not the one who lost everything, I have to go back to the beginning. The crew that pulled me from the water were tanned men with cracked hands and careful habits. They moved like people who'd practiced rescues 100 times without applause. The wool blanket swallowed my shoulders. The flashlight wandered across my pupils. Someone's warm and faceless palm pressed against the pulsing vein in my throat. I listened to their questions as if they were distant radio transmissions. Name, address, head injury. Did I swallow water? "My name is Lida," I said. I was pushed. The man standing next to me, gray mustache, weathered cheeks, didn't flinch. "Who, ma'am?" "My brother." He nodded without hesitation, simply adjusting the gauge to where it needed to be. "Got it. Keep breathing for me." They put the gauge on my arm, and I stared at the dial as if it could convey the night. The boat's engine pulsed, steady and reassuring. I watched the deck light wash over my shoes and thought of the keys I'd given my brother last month, the way he gripped them as if surrendering. "Call," the mustachioed man said. The younger one picked up the radio. "Female, 71, got hold of coordinates." He read the numbers like beads on a rosary. A paramedic waited on the dock with a stainless steel clipboard and a face so soft it made me dizzy. "Let's warm you up," she said, and I could see her breathing. They wrapped me in another blanket, put me on a stretcher, and wheeled me toward the ambulance. "There's no hospital," I said weakly. "We're just going to examine you." I let them. The fluorescence made a false dawn. I watched my reflection in the metal cabinet door, hair slicked to my skull, lipstick ghosted, eyes that looked stranger than the sea. The paramedic listened to my lungs, placed a stethoscope exactly where it needed to be, then clicked a pen. "You're lucky," she said, "and tough." "I left a note," I whispered, "at my attorney's office if I didn't call by midnight." She raised an eyebrow, not unkindly. "Looks like you called another way." A police officer stepped into the ambulance bay before they finished the saline. He had the loosened shoulders of a man who doesn't escalate unless he has to. "My name's Sergeant Vega," he said. "Can I ask you some questions while they work?" I told him everything I could fit before memory turned into fog. The Prosecco, the cautious words, his hand at my elbow, the torque that levered the deck out from under my feet, the engine note curving away instead of back. I told him the number in my account, 430,000, and how he knew it. I told him about the house my husband and I paid for every month like a promise we kept to one another. I told him about the keys and the passport, the way my brother's mouth tightened when the word inheritance slid into conversation as if on wet wheels. Vega took notes, short and accurate. "Did he call anyone after?" "Probably his realtor," I said, and the paramedic's pen paused for a heartbeat. "And he had a 3 o'clock notary appointment for a power of attorney. He scheduled it?" I didn't. "Okay." Vega's voice stayed neutral, but his eyes sharpened. "Do you have proof of that appointment?" I asked the notary to text me confirmation. I closed my eyes, memorizing the vibration that never came because I had left my phone charging in my kitchen. And I left an envelope with my lawyer marked open, "If no call by midnight." It lists our route and the marina and a note to the dockmaster that I'd send a photo when we returned by 10. I could feel the outline of every safeguard I'd laid like stepping stones. "My neighbor is expecting that photo." Vega looked at the paramedic. "Can she be released to give a formal statement?" "If she promises tea and a warm shower first," the paramedic said, "and sleep soon after." "I promise," I said, and the words were easier than I expected. He drove me to the station himself, lights off, engine sound a low purr under the day that was just beginning to blink awake. I gave my statement twice, once to the sergeant with the loosened shoulders and once to the detective whose tie had a grease stain near the knot. They asked for permission to retrieve my emails and to contact my attorney. I signed, fountain pen steady between my fingers, the same grip that had failed to save me a few hours before. They asked for my brother's number. I gave it, plus the marina clerk's name, the notary's office, the neighbor who sleeps with her phone on because her daughter is due any day. "Do you want someone with you tonight?" Vega asked as he walked me out. "We can check your house." "I have locks," I said, "and lights I can set from my phone. I'd prefer to be home while it's still mine." He nodded. "We'll patrol the street." At my kitchen table, the mug steamed in my hands, and the house breathed around me like an animal in sleep. My husband's guitar leaned in its corner with the patience of wood. The clock he'd made from driftwood and a cast-iron skillet handle said 5 after 4. I touched everything I loved as if blessing it. The blue bowl, the knife we bought in Maine, the dog-eared cookbook with grease stains like continents. At 5, my neighbor Anne knocked 3 times in the rhythm we'd agreed on. She stepped inside without waiting. "Oh, Lyda," she said, and her voice found the place beneath my ribs that had stayed clenched and pried it gently open. "I'm not dead," I said, and surprised myself by laughing. It turns out I'm stubborn. By 7, Detective Baines called. "We've spoken to your attorney," he said. "He sent the envelope to us at 1:05. It contains your note of the route, the notary appointment, and copies of the emails with your brother. We've pulled marina CCTV. It shows you boarding the vessel at 19:21. It shows your brother returning alone at 22:15, no Mayday call logged. We have probable cause to bring him in for questioning." "Questioning," I repeated. The tea in my mouth tasted like metal. "Will he be arrested?" "If the story doesn't change," Baines said, "we'll know in an hour." I thanked him and hung up. The house was unexpectedly quiet. A gull cried once outside the back window as if someone had stepped on a flute. I walked to the sink and turned the water on and off for no reason at all. When the call came, it was shorter. "He's in custody," Baines said. "We'll contact you when we need you again. Try to rest." I didn't. I cleaned. I folded the blanket by the door, even though it didn't need folding. I washed the 2 wine glasses, holding each up to the light for water spots. I mended the tear in the pocket of my gray cardigan. The one I had worn on the boat. The tiny needle tugged the wool together, and I thought of stitches in skin, in paper, in stories. By noon, my son texted from 3 states away. Mom, are you okay? Heard something from Anne. I sent him what I could. I'm safe. Please don't call your uncle. I'll explain later. He responded with a string of exclamations he never uses unless he's shaken. Do you need me to come? Not yet, I wrote. Wait until I ask. This isn't about comfort. This is about proof. The house held me until late afternoon when the detective called again. We'd like you to come to the station, he said. There's a recorded interview we'd like you to listen to. When I arrived, he led me to a small room with a table that remembered every elbow ever leaned on it. He pressed a button, and my brother's voice filled the space. It was an accident, he was saying. His tone had the smooth edges of a story he'd sanded too many times. She's unsteady. She insisted on standing. I told her to sit. She slipped. What did you do? Baines's voice, measured. I tried to circle back, but the current pushed us toward the rocks. I panicked. I called out. I thought she'd grab a buoy. I went for help. No mayday, Baines again. I froze, my brother said. I was in shock. Baines let the silence sit until it was uncomfortable. Why did you return to the marina alone at 10:15? I needed to get a spotlight, my brother said quickly. And more help. Who did you call? He hesitated. No one. I thought people on the dock would see. Baines stopped the recording. He's lying, he said. But juries don't convict on my opinion. We'll need the pieces you hinted at. I brought some, I said, and reached for my bag. I laid out photocopies like cards, the email confirming the notary appointment he had made in my name, the realtor's voicemail from last week, chirpy, confirming our walkthrough on Saturday, the printouts from my bank showing an online login from his IP address at 11 the night before, after I had gone to bed. I placed down a photograph I'd asked the marina clerk to take of us together on the boat at 7:20, the clerk's thumb blotting half the sky. I set my neighbor Anne's text sent at 9:30. You back? Send me a photo so I can stop worrying. I then placed the last, a tiny, scuffed device the size of a thumb drive. What's that? Baines asked. A tracker, I said. He rented the yacht, but I tucked this in the storage compartment by the stern rail while he was getting ice. It's mine. I use it on my suitcase when I travel. I didn't know I'd use it on my brother. Baines looked at me as if reconsidering the category women my age belong to. You thought he might do this. I thought he might try something, I said. He's 73 and he has been borrowing my life since we were kids. He found out how much I inherited after Martin died, and overnight I was a problem to solve. We left the station that evening with a plan. The detective would pull the tracker data. He'd subpoena the notary's calendar and the realtor's call logs. He'd ask the doctor about a moment last month when my brother accompanied me to an appointment and asked the nurse to note memory concerns. He'd ask why my brother had logged into my bank at 11 the night before the cruise and why he had searched how to transfer PIOD beneficiary 2 days earlier. I would call my bank in public with him, listening, freezing every portal he could reach. I would go home, make soup, and try to sleep like any other human being whose life remained intact. I did those things. I made carrot ginger soup and ate it with a slice of the birthday cake I hadn't tasted. It was good, and the sweetness felt almost defiant. Sleep came in patches, soundtracked by the ocean, lodged still in my ears. At 3 a.m. I woke, heart skittering, because I had remembered something, a small gouge in the yacht's rail where his wedding ring might have scraped when he pushed. It was a detail that would mean little by itself, but could sound like truth when measured against the rest. I wrote it down with the other scraps that occur to you at inconvenient times, the weather at dusk, the brand of Prosecco, the shape of his shadow, when my eyes cleared the water. The next morning, Baines called. The tracker data shows the boat didn't slow after the coordinates where you were found, he said. In fact, it accelerated for 1 minute, then sailed a wide arc back toward the harbor. We have that. We have your neighbor's text, the marina photo, and the notary's confirmation. We also have his internet searches, and this matters. The crew who pulled you out had their GoPro recording for training. It picked up your first words, "My brother pushed me." I didn't remember saying it, but it sounded like something I would have done. Where is he now? I asked. In a holding cell, Baines said. He'll see a judge this afternoon. There will likely be a no-contact order. We'll need you for the arraignment if you can bear it." I could. I put on a dress my husband loved, the one the color of green glass, and brushed my hair into the shape of a woman who refused to be erased. In the mirror, I looked older than yesterday and truer than last year. At the courthouse, the benches were polished by decades of worry. My brother entered with his attorney, a man with a handsome head and sleepy eyes, and avoided looking at me. He wore the same navy blazer he'd worn at my husband's funeral, and I couldn't unbraid those two images: the respectful grip of my hand at graveside and the shove into the dark. The judge read out the charges: attempted murder, assault, attempted financial exploitation of an elder, wire fraud, identity theft. The attorney asked for release on his own recognizance. The prosecutor argued for remand. They compromised: house arrest with an ankle monitor, no contact, surrender of passport, and a caveat that any interference with my finances would send him back to a cell. As we shuffled out, my brother looked up, and finally our eyes met. The expression I saw there wasn't remorse. It was calculation, flicking from me to the prosecutor to his lawyer and back, taking inventory like a man counting exits. Outside, rain began with the gentle insistence of someone tapping your shoulder. I stood under the awning and breathed. Detective Baines joined me, tied damp at the edges. "He'll try to move money anyway," he said. "We've placed holds, but check your accounts." "I already did," I said. "I moved what mattered into a trust yesterday morning." "Who's the trustee?" "Me," I said, and the question warmed me unexpectedly. "With a successor named who isn't family?" He nodded. "Good." I went home and wrote a letter to my husband, because sometimes the living need to talk to the dead to calibrate their courage. I told him what had happened as if he'd been on the water with me, because in my mind he had been. I told him about the detective with the stained tie and the paramedic who called me tough, about Anne's 3-knot code and the feel of wood under a wool blanket. I folded the letter and slid it into the drawer where I keep receipts that prove ordinary, necessary things. The days that followed tried to decide if they were ordinary or not. The anchors of routine, walk, tea, calls, the crossword I argue with and sometimes win, made the shape of time. Underneath, the investigation braided itself tighter. The notary produced the appointment for a power of attorney my brother had scheduled, complete with a pre-typed signature line and the time he had asked them to stay late. The realtor surrendered a cheerful email he'd sent after 9 p.m. the night of the cruise. "All set for Saturday? If your sister isn't ready, we can do a quiet pocket listing." The doctor's office noted that my brother had mischaracterized his concern at my last appointment and requested that memory screening be added due to family worry. The yacht rental company had a clause in their contract requiring a captain if the client was inexperienced. My brother had lied, and the sales associate remembered because she'd felt uneasy about it and noted client insists. None of this was a verdict, but it was a chorus, and it was in tune. My son arrived on the third day, having ignored my instruction to wait. "I couldn't sit there," he said, and I forgave him because he is my only child, and goodness deserves as much slack as nerves do. We sat at my kitchen table, and I told him everything I could without turning his heart into glass. "Why?" he asked finally, and the word felt smaller than the shape of the thing it aimed at. "Debt," I said. "Greed? A lifetime of cutting corners until the corners became the road? Maybe all of it." "He used to teach me how to bait a hook," my son said. "He told me to stand still so the fish wouldn't see me." "Even good men hold advice and harm in the same hand," I said. "Our job is to learn which fingers to trust." He stayed 2 nights, fixed my back gate, cooked an omelet the way his father did, and cried in the driveway where I couldn't see him. His kindness was a kind of armor I hadn't known I was missing. On the 6th day, Baines called. "We found something in land records," he said. 3 weeks ago, a quitclaim deed was recorded that would have transferred your house to a company your brother controls. The notary signature is a woman we can't locate, and we have reason to believe it's a forgery. It didn't take because your trust is properly recorded and supersedes it. But it looks like he tried to steal the house before the water. The words were wait and then relief, both, like a cast iron pan that won't let you burn dinner. So he had a plan A? I said. This was plan B. It appears so, Chinadon, he said. We're adding real estate fraud to the charges. There are moments when the world pinches smaller and moments when it opens. I felt both then, the smallness of betrayal and the widening door of consequence. 1 week after the night on the water, I answered a call from a number I didn't recognize. The voice that came through was my brother's, thinned by the metallic echo of recorded lines. Lita. You're not supposed to call me, Mohammed, I said. I needed to explain, he said. I panicked. You know I panic. You fell. I reached. The rail. No, I said quietly. Don't talk about the rail. He took a breath. This can go away. We can make it go away. I'll sign whatever you want. I'll stay away. Just don't destroy me. The phrase lodged where sympathy might have once. I saw him at 8, knees torn by gravel, lying that he hadn't broken the jar. I saw him at 25, promising to repay what he'd borrowed to start a business that never existed. I saw him at 73, calculating the angle of a hand and the weight of my body and the music's cover. I saw all of him at once, and he was smaller than I wanted my brother to be. You tried to destroy me, I said. The difference is I leave people standing. He cursed softly, an old reflex. You always did like your morals. I couldn't help it. I laughed, not kindly. No, I like my life. I plan to keep it. I'll tell the judge we're working it out, he said. If you don't cooperate, you'll be dragged through court for years. You're not strong enough for that. The line didn't make me angry. It made me calm. You still think you know my strength, I said. You never did. I hung up and called Baines. He logged the call, flagged the violation of the no-contact order, and the next morning my brother's ankle monitor sent a tidbit of data to someone's screen that ended any debate. A patrol car found him 2 streets from my house. He told them he was just walking and didn't realize the radius. He went back to a cell for the weekend. The judge's patience shortened on Monday. In the weeks that followed, the case moved like a tide that looks still and is not. There were hearings and filings and the quiet grind of paperwork. The story made a small column in the local paper. Man accused in yacht incident faces fraud counts. I read it once and set it under the dog's water bowl in a petty victory that made me smile. My attorney, a woman my age who understood the geometry of stubbornness, strategized with the prosecutor. Attempted murder is a high bar, she said frankly. But the fraud is clear. The jury will see the whole picture. I want his consequences to match his actions, I said. And I want my house and money safe. You'll have that, she said. As for the rest, we'll aim for what we can stand on. 2 months after the water, the preliminary hearing gathered its instruments and began. I took the stand. The courtroom was smaller than in movies and smelled faintly of old paper. I told my story with the same economy I used to teach my students to cut adjectives. I did not cry. I did not embellish. I said where his hand had been and what happened next. I didn't call it shove or help. I described emotion and let physics make its own arguments. My brother's attorney rose for cross-exam. He was polite in the way men are when they want you to admit you're fragile. Mrs. Mendel, he began, you've had some issues with balance, haven't you? I tripped on a cracked sidewalk last year, I said. I got back up. And your memory? He asked. There was a note in your file, a note my brother asked the doctor to add, I said. My husband died 20 months ago, and I grieved. I forgot where I put the garlic once. I have not forgotten who pushed me into the water. He moved on. Why would your brother try to harm you? Motive, I said. He wanted my house and my money. I looked at the jurist's face, then back at the attorney. He knew the exact amount. The prosecutor presented the tracker data and the GoPro audio, the forged quitclaim deed, the emails with the notary and the realtor, the bank login at 11 p.m., the internet searches, the witness from the marina who took the photo, and remembered the way my brother refused a captain. He presented the tight pattern and let the judge see the picture without having to squint. When my brother took the stand, because pride sometimes refuses counsel, he tried to perform remorse and landed its self-pity. "We were celebrating," he said. "I wanted to do something kind for my sister. She's alone. I was thinking about her future. She stumbled. I did what I could." "Did you call 911?" the prosecutor asked. I froze. "Did you return to the spot? Did you schedule a power of attorney for that day?" "I wanted to help." The prosecutor let him talk until the hole he was digging became architectural. Then he asked, mildly, "Do you recognize this email?" My brother looked at the printout. "No. It's from your account." "That doesn't mean I wrote it," he said, and realized too late what he had just admitted, that someone else might have access, or that he was comfortable denying the obvious. The judge advanced the case. Trial was set. My attorney advised me to study the calendar and also to keep living. "Don't turn your days into a holding pattern," she said. "We have to be careful, but you still get to be a person." I took a swim lesson at the Y because it felt both rebellious and necessary. The instructor, a woman my age with hair like a halo of iron filings, taught me to blow bubbles like a child and to float in water that could not surprise me. "Let the water do the holding," she said, and I did. I also fixed the porch step we'd been ignoring since winter, planted late marigolds, and wrote the check for the scholarship Martin and I had talked about when we believed we had all the time in the world. For women over 60 starting something new, I wrote on the memo line and saw my own name there without writing it. If this were the part of the story where everything turned, I would like to say the climax arrived with trumpets. It didn't. It crept in on an ordinary afternoon when the prosecutor called with a voice that knew both victory and compromise. "He'll take a plea," she said. "Attempted manslaughter, wire fraud, forgery, identity theft, and attempted exploitation. 15 years, serve 10, restitution, and a lifetime financial guardianship ban. He doesn't admit intent to kill, he admits reckless criminal conduct that could have killed you." I leaned against the counter and watched the shadow of a leaf crawl across the tile. "And if we go to trial, we could win bigger," she said. "We could also split the baby, or lose one piece and spend 2 years doing it. What do you think?" "I think this keeps you safe," she said, "and it tells the world what he did was a crime." I imagined a jury hesitating at the word intent, imagined my brother's lawyer gnawing at push versus slip, imagined my own face under lights again as a man my age tried to make me smaller. I imagined the women who would hear about this case and check their locks and bank accounts with a new attention. "Take it," I said, "and ask for the maximum in the range." At sentencing, I was allowed to speak. I stood and faced the man who had held my hand at our mother's deathbed and then placed a hand on me that could have ended mine. I spoke to the court, but I spoke to him. "You are my brother," I said. That should have been enough. I forgive the boy you were when we didn't know better. I can't forgive the man who looked at my life and saw inventory. I'm not asking you to be destroyed. I'm asking this court to teach you something I tried to teach you when we were children, that other people are not your tools. The judge sentenced him, as the plea specified, 10 years to serve before parole eligibility. Restitution to cover the legal fees I had paid to protect myself from my own blood. A prohibition on acting as a fiduciary for anyone ever. The court advised the Department of Real Estate of the forged deed. The court advised the notary board of the fraudulent signature. The court advised him that any contact with me would return him to a cell faster than he could finish saying my name. As the deputies led him away, my brother turned his head toward me. His mouth shaped a word I couldn't hear and didn't need to. The door closed with the tidy finality of a book ending where it should. People like to say the ending is the satisfying part, but I have learned the satisfaction is in the middle, in the small choices that accumulate into a life that holds. The revenge I wanted was never a mirror of what he did to me. It was the opposite, proof that I would not become as careless with human beings as he had, that I would not push, but tether, not erase, but record, not hide, but bring everything into the sort of light that makes shadows small. After the sentencing, I went to the water with Anne. We walked the harbor path and counted gulls and watched boys in hooded sweatshirts practice throwing lines. I stood at the rail and let the wind touch my face as if checking for fever. The sea looked different than the night he pushed me. It looked honest. Anne looped her arm through mine. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like myself," I said. "And like someone else I decided to be." We went home and made tea. I opened the envelope I had left at my attorney's office and slid everything back where it belonged. I kept one thing out, the marina photo with the clerk's thumb blotting half the sky, me and my brother side by side, two people who once shared a story that now had a chapter I wished another author had written. I put it in a drawer that wasn't the trash and wasn't the mantle. There are places for things you cannot display and cannot discard. Weeks passed. The water warmed, then cooled. The scholarship letters began to arrive on my porch, written in a variety of hands that reminded me of classrooms and mornings. I didn't think I could go back to school. I didn't think anyone designed things for someone like me. "I'm terrified and grateful," I wrote back. "Me too," I said. "You'll be fine." It felt like putting something right in a world that gets so much wrong by habit. One evening, late, my phone buzzed with a number from the prison. I didn't answer. The machine took it, recorded a silence, then a hang-up. I erased it and turned the phone face down on the table. Then I went to the porch and watched the street. A young couple walked past, arguing softly and then laughing. A raccoon moved along the fence as if checking his holdings. Somewhere a woman sang to a baby, and the tune floated up like something misplaced and found. I thought then about the difference between surviving and living. Surviving is how you name the fact of being here after someone tried to write you out of your own story. Living is what you do to write yourself back in. On the first cold day of fall, I went to the marina and rented a small boat with a captain who turned out to be a woman with a braid down her back like a rope you'd trust. We motored out only as far as the red buoy. The chop was gentle, she cut the engine, and we drifted a minute under a sky shaped like clean paper. "Want to take the wheel?" she asked. "I don't," I said, and she laughed. "But I do want to stand." She came to my side and set her hand lightly at my elbow, not to hold me steady, but to offer the choice. I took the rail in my left hand and set my feet, and felt the boat's small sways find the rhythm of my legs. I thought of that night, and then I thought beyond it, to the lighted kitchen and the letter to Martin and Anne's knock and Detective Baines's stained tie, to my son's omelet and the marigolds, to the women who would open their own envelopes marked, "Open if you forget who you are." "How's that feel?" the captain asked. "Like the world is large," I said. We headed back, slow enough to write the root in my bones. At the dock, I tipped her too much, and she pretended not to notice because some kindnesses come in pairs. I walked home with salt on my skin and a new understanding of what my body still wanted to do. That night, I opened a file on my computer I had labeled, with a mixture of hope and gallows humor, contingencies. I added a page at the top, a note to any woman who might one day open it because she felt a hand on the small of her back that didn't mean steady. It listed practical things, bank alerts, powers of attorney, you name before anyone asks, a trust recorded in the right county, a neighbor who will expect a picture at 10, a doctor you tell the truth to, a detective's number, a marina clerk who will take a photo with his thumb blotted across the sky. It also listed less practical things that felt just as crucial. The willingness to be rude to people who need you polite to succeed, the recognition that love and harm sometimes wear the same suit, the habit of writing a note and placing it where you'll find it when fear argues louder than memory. I printed the page and put it beneath the blue bowl with the keys, which now numbered 3 again, bright as coins. I stood a minute longer than necessary in the quiet, listening to the clock my husband had made count, another measured second. Then I turned off the kitchen light and went to bed with the window cracked enough to let in the sea. In the dark, before sleep, I let myself ask the question people think they're supposed to avoid because it sounds like weakness? How could my own brother do this to me? The answers were dull and common and therefore true. Money, fear, old habit, the click of a door closing, on empathy one day at a time. The question didn't accuse anymore. It instructed. It told me where to place my feet so that the next time someone I love says, hold the rail, I will decide whether to obey. In the morning, I made coffee in the quiet and balanced the reel in the remembered the way you balance on a boat. Knees soft, a hand somewhere that can steady you without telling you who to be. The house, my house, warmed as the furnace sighed awake. I leaned against the counter and watched the street and when thought about the tide of a life that is still mine. There is a word people use for stories like this: closure. I don't close. I refill. I plant. I learn the harbor better than the fear. I leave a photograph under glass and a page under a bowl and a space wide and stubborn as my heart for a future that includes me standing exactly where I intend to be.
My grandma told me this story. I have many more stories. Subscribe so you don't miss the most interesting things.